Hello and welcome to Newsmax Daily for Monday, July 28th, 2025, the 209th day of the year and World Conservation Day, which originated in India in 1998 and has grown every year since then across the globe. It is, of course, all about the importance of protecting natural resources. It's also National Soccer Day in the U.S., which I believe is the only place that soccer is called soccer, right? It's football everywhere else, and maybe you spend the weekend at your kid's soccer game or soccer practice. Yes, it was hot. Yes, some of the other parents are annoying, but enjoy it while you can. It's also National Milk Chocolate Day, which could definitely help out on a Monday, right? Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Probably not so much if you were traveling. More than 1,200 flights delayed or canceled yesterday due to severe weather moving from the plains to the East Coast. Many of those areas under extreme heat warnings today. So if you have to be outside, be extra careful. If you were enjoying your weekend and not really paying that much attention, you missed a lot of news. Remember when nothing really used to happen on the weekend? President Trump, as you know, spent the weekend in Scotland working and, yes, playing golf. I mean, that's basically what he does. He works and he plays golf at his golf courses.
We are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. They are going to agree to invest into the United States $600 billion more than they're investing already.
I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic.
That's Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, who met with the president at his Turnberry, Scotland golf resort after he played around with his son Eric yesterday. The trade deal calls for a 15% across-the-board tariff on most European exports to the United States, with a few exceptions. As the president said, the EU will, over time, invest $600 billion in the United States, $600 billion, and also buy $700 billion worth of American energy, and there will be no tariffs on American exports to Europe. This morning, the president met with UK Prime Minister Starmer and said he's going to reduce the 50-day deadline that he gave Russia to reach a peace deal with Ukraine, saying he's disappointed in Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I'm disappointed in President Putin, very disappointed in him. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number because I think I already know the answer what's going to happen.
The deadline for the peace deal is to make a peace deal or face more massive economic sanctions. Meanwhile, the Russia collusion Obama story continued to dominate the news cycle over the weekend. This is Newsmax host Tom Basile.
There are moments in the life of every nation that mark a sea change in its history. For ancient Rome, it was the collapse of the Republic and the rise of the emperors. In England, it was the Magna Carta, and later, as in Great Britain, the independence of the Commonwealth nations. In China, the rise of communism and the brutal Cultural Revolution. Here in the United States, it was the American Civil War and grappling with the stain of slavery. We are again at one of those moments, I believe. Don't think that just because the vast majority of us live our lives in peace and we move from work to school to sports practice with ease, that the moment that we are experiencing together is no less significant. Are you paying attention to it? Do you realize that it's happening? A reckoning may very well be coming in this country, folks. Marxists in America set out to take over one of the major political parties decades ago. And for decades, their work advanced often quietly to embed anti-American ideologies in our government, our media, and our schools. Well, they've done it.
We have this new brand of Democrat, which is the leftists. And we win by bringing people into that coalition. We are a big tent party.
The chairman of the Democrat National Committee says that his is a big tent party. In doing so, he refuses to condemn socialism. And a candidate for New York City mayor who is openly anti-Semitic and believes in globalizing the Intifada. In the last month, the work of radicals within the party has become a runaway train that few, if any, Democrat leaders or officials have the power or even the desire to stop.
Mr. Bernal, was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Ms. Tomasini, did President Joe Biden or anyone else in the White House instruct you to conceal or destroy classified material found at President Biden's home or office?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
That was a former Deputy White House Chief of Staff, Joe Biden's work husband, Anthony Bernal, and President Biden's doctor pleading the Fifth when asked if they improperly exercised presidential powers or authorities or lied to the public about the president's mental and physical decline. Folks, when people other than the president conspire together to exert his authority, it is a direct attack on the Constitution and the will of the American people. It is an attempt to nullify our elections. In the last 2 weeks, more evidence has been released that President Obama and the highest levels of our government conspired to illegally manipulate intelligence agencies and federal law enforcement authorities to spy on and then attempt to delegitimize an American presidency, the first term of Donald Trump. You know, there's something to this, folks, when most of the legacy media is completely silent on the allegations against Obama, Brennan, Comey, Biden, and Clapper. 100 more pages of records were released showing efforts by Obama and his national security officials to bury benign intelligence and then fabricate an alternative assessment of a Russian influence campaign on the American electorate and Donald Trump's alleged collusion with the Russian dictator. Here's former Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence.
This was a conspiracy, a treasonous conspiracy to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump in that 2016 election and the legitimacy of his presidency, and enacted what was essentially a years-long coup.
It was intended to lay the foundation for the impeachment hearings and denigrate the incoming administration in a way that was clearly an abuse of power and a threat to the republic.
That is Tom Basile, host of America Right Now, Saturday mornings at 9 Eastern on Newsmax. And John Bachman spoke with one of the people who was actually sentenced to prison in connection with the Russian hoax.
Let's bring in former Trump 2016 foreign policy advisor and Newsmax contributor George Papadopoulos, also with us, former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Newsmax legal analyst Jay Town. Gentlemen, great to see you both.
Good to be with you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right. Well, George, let's get your reaction to these newly declassified documents.
Yeah, John, I think one of the greatest achievements of President Trump has been to really expose the rot and corruption that pervaded his predecessor's attempt to block a smooth transition of power. What he's also done is he's exposed that the Democrats have really normalized the politically and selective and politically motivated targeting of dissent in America, whether it's Catholics, school teachers, conservatives, MAGA grandmas, or a former president. What the president's DNI has done has been one of the greatest and most consequential moves in American history by declassifying information that has answered the question that we have all been asking: how high up did the scandal go? Many believed Brennan, some thought it was Comey, others thought it was Clinton. We now know that former President Obama's fingerprints were all over this scandal, and he will face accountability, whether it's judicially or from a reputational standpoint. According to the president himself, the immunity ruling out of the Supreme Court likely insulates President Obama from any criminal wrongdoing. That doesn't mean that his cohorts or his underlings will be spared in this justice maneuvering of the DOJ.
Yeah, and Jay, for your legal perspective on this, I mean, we heard it from President Trump. He likely believes this. George echoed this sentiment as well, that President Obama is protected from prosecution. There's also what I've heard from some other attorneys that Brennan, Clapper, James Comey, and the rest could also be out of the statute of limitations whether they lied before Congress. But give us your thoughts on their exposure to criminal charges.
Yeah, and this is where we need to manage expectations, let the DOJ strike force do its job, and figure out if false statements were made to Congress, for instance. You brought it up. Were they false, and how long ago were those false statements? And I think that the manufacturing of intelligence, as DNI Gabbard put it, is a crime in and of itself. And the thing that the strike force is going to definitely be drilling down on is, okay, well, every time there's an act to sort of cover up that manufacturing of intelligence that was on December 6th when Obama ordered Brennan and Clapper to go manufacture the intelligence, as Gabbard said, every time that was covered up with a lie or with some other statement, perhaps, or even a writing, that could toll the conspiracy statute of limitations. And so as long as we're within that 5-year period, and as I understand it, I do believe that Brennan testified before Congress about this in just the last couple of years. So he's probably facing the most exposure of anyone, but immunity doesn't prevent anyone from being a witness before a grand jury or a trial jury or even the United States Congress. And I think we're going to see perhaps all of that.
Yeah, George, even if there aren't, the ability here, whether it's based on the statute of limitations or the Supreme Court ruling to bring criminal charges, what's critically important for everyone is to know exactly what happened. And by exposing that, Tulsi Gabbard has done a lot. I also understand at the DNI's office, there is this special group that's using things like artificial intelligence to dig through these documents that have been hidden away in corners. What else do you expect to be uncovered, considering you are so closely involved with so much of this?
I certainly believe that we'll find out that the scandal goes much further back than Crossfire Hurricane. And this isn't simply my opinion. This was the conclusion of Special Counsel John Durham.
Former foreign policy advisor to the Trump 2016 campaign, George Papadopoulos, with host John Bachman and Newsmax legal analyst Jay Town. Now for the bad news. And remember last week I said I unfortunately do not feel confident that anything would come of this, certainly for former President Obama, right? Here is Newsmax senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano, on this morning's Wake Up America.
Judge, I've gotten some heat because I've said it multiple times. I do not think the former President Obama can be charged under any circumstances on what we know right now. Did I get it right without your guidance?
You got it 100% correct. The immunity decision, which quite frankly shocked a lot of people in the judicial and legal community because of its breadth and its depth. Its breadth covers every official act of the President of the United States. Its depth prohibits the government or a prosecutor from inquiring into motivation. So even if Barack Obama's motivation was to overturn a lawful election, that's out of the question. That cannot be inquired into, and it cannot be used as a hook on which future prosecutors can hang their hats. Stated differently, if he did what Tulsi Gabbard says he did, and there appears to be evidence that he did, right, directly and indirectly, and I can tell you about some of the indirectly as well, with which I was on which I was reporting at Fox back in the day. He is immune from the prosecution. Now, treason itself is defined in the Constitution as waging war on the United States or giving aid and comfort to the enemy in wartime. It is a wartime structure, and it is intentionally narrowly defined because British kings used treason as an excuse to execute their enemies who looked at them the wrong way.
The interesting thing, too, is, they were saying this is political. He was trying to harm his political opponent. Well, every decision every president makes, regardless of party, is political. You can't get into the motives. I forget whether it was Justice Kavanaugh or Gorsuch who wrote that opinion, said we're making a rule for the ages.
It was a Gorsuch concurrence who said we're making a rule for the ages. And there's that old one-liner from FDR. I'm not a fan of FDR at all. Mm-hmm. Good politics makes good government, because you can't really separate the two when you're in the White House.
So if you're Clapper, Comey, Hillary Clinton, in that group, are you now subject? Because they do not have presidential immunity.
No, they don't, but there is a statute of limitations, and it's 5 years. So if they did, again, what Ms. Gabbard says they did, it was more than 5 years ago, they can't be prosecuted. Now, if they testified under oath and denied these things in fewer than 5 years, they could be prosecuted for lying under oath, but they can't be prosecuted for the underlying crime. And in order to prove they were lying under oath, you'd have to prove that they did commit the underlying crime. They, in fact, were lying about that about which they were testifying.
So there you go. Certainly not what you wanted to hear, but it's highly unlikely that anything will happen to any major player in this Russian collusion hoax. Another big swamp show. That's what it is. Will it hurt Obama's legacy? Only to the people that already don't like Obama. Obama supporters and mainstream media have given this story just about zero attention. What is getting plenty of attention across all the media and across both sides of the aisle is the Epstein files story, even in Scotland.
Oh, you got to be kidding with that. No, had nothing to do with it. Only you would think that.
This coming after Epstein's companion and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, spent nearly 10 hours talking with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche last week. Former Secret Service Special Agent and Department of Homeland Security Advisor Charles Marino spoke about it with former Epstein attorney Alan Dershowitz on Sunday Report.
Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche visited with Maxwell this week. You said last week that she should be freed so she can give the whole story. She received limited immunity and answered all of Blanche's question. What is next for Maxwell and the DOJ in this case?
Well, I hope that Congress will subpoena her. I hope that she'll have her sentence commuted and she'll be able to tell the whole truth. The whole truth is going to be very, very disappointing. Of course, there's no client list because Jeffrey Epstein had no clients. He was somebody who was interested in self-gratification. He had sex with many, or sexual contact at least, with many women, some below the age of consent, maybe 15, 16, 17-year-olds. We're not sure of the specifics, but there's no evidence of a client list. What there is there are accusations made by people against individuals. For example, one woman named Sarah Ransom accused Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Richard Branson of having sex with children and said she had videotapes of it that she sent to Russia for safekeeping. The New York Post, which was the beneficiary of all this information, did an investigation, found out it wasn't true. She then admitted she made up the whole story. The same thing was true with another a woman named, what's her name? Maria Farmer. She made up stories about seeing people in places and at times when she couldn't have been in those places and times. She also denied the Holocaust and said that the Jews were to blame for all the problems of the world. So when you disclose everything, you're going to disclose a lot of accusations, some of which may be true, many of which are going to be false. And so the key is to make sure you can separate truth from falsity and not just assume that everybody accused is guilty, or just because somebody was on Epstein's plane made them a co-conspirator. None of that is true.
You know, the Wall Street Journal releasing more information this week saying Trump was told back in May that he was in the files. We knew they were friends. We also knew they had a falling out. So what's the big scoop here, if any?
There's no scoop. Everybody knows. There are photographs. Everybody knows that Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein. So did Bill Gates. So did Bill Clinton. I mean, I was on a phone call once. I was at Caroline Kennedy's house having dinner with President Clinton. He was then president. The phone rang, and he took the phone and talked for 10 or 15 minutes, and then he handed me the phone. It was Jeffrey Epstein. We know he had friends all over the place. A woman named Lynn Forrester, who then became the Lady Rothschild, introduced Epstein to everybody. She was his introducer. She got him friends all over Martha's Vineyard and other places in New York. And so a lot of people were friendly with him. I used to go to science seminars that he sponsored at Harvard, where Nobel Prize winners, the president of Harvard, the provost of Harvard, all came. Of course, everybody is in the files. That doesn't mean anything. What's essential is whether anybody had sex with underage people or whether there was any trafficking. Those are issues that are right now extremely speculative, and we have to get to the bottom of it. And I think Ghislaine Maxwell can help us get to the bottom of it. If she is having her sentence commuted and given total immunity, she shouldn't be in jail for 5 years for what she is alleged to have done. She served more time than anybody has ever served for any comparable offense.
Well, Professor, to your earlier point about the contacts that Jeffrey Epstein had with numerous people, they also mentioned your name in the article, saying you sent Jeffrey Epstein a birthday message as well. You said last week they contacted you, but you couldn't remember if you did, in fact, write Epstein a birthday message. Will you be taking legal action against them? And has anyone else reached out to you?
No, I asked them if they would send me a copy of what they claim I did. I wrote, I would check my signature to see if it's authentic. They said they couldn't do it yet. Maybe they would do it in the future. My wife said she didn't think that I would ever send a birthday greeting that had a cover of a magazine. But I don't know. It was 23 years ago. I knew him. I went to his seminars. I was asked by Ghislaine Maxwell to write a birthday greeting. Of course I did. I've probably written hundreds of birthday greetings. I'm on this network where I give birthday greetings to people and give the money to charity. So, birthday greetings are very, very common. And I wouldn't be surprised if I sent a birthday greeting, but I'd like to see the evidence. And I don't know why the Wall Street Journal is hesitant to send me what they claim is my own signature. If it's my own signature, I'll confirm it. If it's not, I'll tell them and they'll do further investigations. Let's get to the truth.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, and if you're new to Newsmax and you're new to the Newsmax Daily and you haven't heard that much of Alan Dershowitz, he represented Jeffrey Epstein in a completely different case before the sexual abuse allegations and the human trafficking and all that. But he's known Epstein for a very long time. As he said, in the beginning, he was even falsely accused by a victim of being someone involved in sexual activities with minors. He's as great of a resource, really, as anybody else. And I believe echoing the sentiment of most everyone else right there. Republicans, Democrats, independents, people that can care less about politics or party. Let's get to the bottom line. Let's get the truth out. And hopefully with Ghislaine Maxwell now willing to cooperate, we are on our way to at least getting some of the truth, right? She is the crypt keeper. In other news, 11 people are recovering from stab wounds after being randomly attacked at a Traverse City, Michigan Walmart on Saturday. This is Sheriff Michael Shea.
1 count of terrorism, 11 counts of assault with intent to murder. Mr. Gilley's history shows prior assaultive incidents as well as controlled substance violations.
There was blood everywhere. There was people kind of sitting at the ends of aisles, just bleeding.
Multiple citizens, including one who was armed with a pistol, were confronting the male suspect in the parking lot and preventing him from harming further people and leaving.
Former Marine Derek Perry is the guy that held the suspect at gunpoint for police using his licensed handgun. Kudos to him and the other bystander who jumped into action. And you've likely seen this online. In Cincinnati, Ohio, police are investigating the violent videos that were posted and reposted on social media this weekend, which appear to be mostly young people of color attacking mostly white people. And some of them, in some of those videos, elderly white people, while dozens of people took video on their phones instead of intervening or doing anything else, which we have seen in so many instances over and over, and it's really just sickening. Vice President Vance's half-brother, Corey Bowman, is actually a Cincinnati mayoral candidate and one of the many people that reposted at least one of the videos saying the current administration is not doing enough to address growing crime in the city. Other posts from locals are also questioning the lack of police presence on the streets, with a huge music festival happening and a Cincinnati Reds game happening pretty much at the same time. Again, we need to wait for all of the facts, but it doesn't look good. And let's wrap it up with the great Michael Savage. Last night, Newsmax aired another terrific documentary, this one on the former radio star, Newsmax host turned podcast star, Michael Savage. From the Bronx to the big time. And then Savage spoke about it.
Welcome to the Savage Nation. For those of you who have just watched the Newsmax TV biopic of yours truly, my life, I'm here speaking with you because you are my loyalists. You've been with me for so many years. I'm going to do something I've never done before. And you're welcome to comment on the chat line. We are live on X, on FaceTime, and on YouTube. And you can send your comments, and we will talk via the comments. As we are doing this together, I am going to pick up this phone, and I'm going to dial two people who were in that particular biopic of me. If you saw it, if you didn't see it, it's okay. I thought it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Folks, I see some of you did watch it on Newsmax. I don't know how to explain to you that watching your own life on video from the time you're a young man, even a kid, to now, and back and forth, is not easy. It's hard to incorporate the emotional changes from seeing yourself as a young man with a child in your arms who is now a grown man himself. I never thought I'd live to be this old and still alive to even talk about my life. And I'm going to try to do this in a meaningful way without sounding maudlin or self-absorbed, which is almost impossible.
And I'm going to fast forward to after the commercial break.
We're back after the commercial break now on the Savage Nation. You know, when I heard, first let me say to all of you out there who've watched me from the early days until now, some of you still have my first book, Earth Medicine, Earth Foods, from 1974. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to have a drink now. This is straight vodka and a little lime. As we say in the Bronx, to life, l'chaim. Oh. First drink of the day. Haven't had a drink all day. It was a long day for me. I drove down. I had a driver drive me down from Lake Tahoe home, 4 hours in a car. Long ride. Great kid. Military veteran. You want to know what work is? I'll tell you what work is. This kid drives hundreds of miles a day to make a living now after the military because he's a white male and they won't hire him. That's right. You heard me. He told me his whole story. If you think it's over, you think DEI is over, you're mistaken. It's why the country is half crippled right now. Because the people who, I don't care whether you're pink, white, yellow, black, quality matters, and without quality, there could be no equality. I said that years ago. I'll say it again. That's why the university have turned into cesspools of shit, garbage, because quality was thrown out of the window in order to replace it with a color code.
That's Michael Savage on Newsmax last night, reflecting on the airing of the docuseries From the Bronx to the Big Time, which will be airing again if you missed it. Michael and Newsmax, of course, will let you know when that's going to happen again. As a native New Yorker and a radio guy, I loved it, but it's so much more than that. I mean, what an incredible life. On Wall Street, the stock markets kicked off the new week in the green after the S&P and NASDAQ closed at new record highs again back on Friday. This week will be highlighted by more marquee earnings: Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Chevron, Exxon, Coinbase, Meta, aka Facebook and Instagram, just to name a few. If you own any of those stocks, heads up, it's going to get wild. There is also a Federal Reserve meeting this week, which could get wild. Will Jerome Powell finally lower interest rates after last week's contentious public meeting with President Trump? And then on Friday, we get the jobs report after a slew of other economic data sprinkled in through the week. Bitcoin and most other major cryptocurrencies mostly flat this morning. Bitcoin right at 119,000. Ethereum up $50, pushing 3,900. Be sure to keep up with all of the day's news from Scotland and everywhere else. Breaking developments throughout the day as well on Newsmax N2 and Newsmax.com. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon, American Agenda, all the way through Rob Schmidt tonight, Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly reports, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily podcast. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe on whatever platform you may be listening to. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, especially if you like some chocolate. Now you have an excuse, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.